Hey guys, how's it going? It's Christmas. It happened. We made it. Christmas is here. We did it. Oh man. For a toy man like me, works in a toy store, this is the culmination of an entire year of work. We get this one lone day off and then we get back to the grind. Tomorrow's Boxing Day, where everybody comes and returns the stuff they bought. And then we jump right into inventory. Gotta get things ready and arranged and get the store cleaned up and get everything proper so we can count every single item. A little over 20,000 items. Make sure everything's accounted for. And then after inventory, then the days get easier. January, February, real slow time of month. It's the time of the year, real slow. It's the time where we lick our wounds, relax. Work's not tough. You can spend more time with the actual customers. We'll see what it looks like, given the year. We'll see if we open back up. We'll see if we let customers back in. I know that Doug Ford is chomping at the bit to get people back in the stores. So it'll be sooner rather than later. I wonder what Christ would think of all this energy we're putting into this, huh? Even if you take it from the purely Christian perspective of, oh, it's Christ's birthday. Do you think he'd really want you to go to all the trouble? I know if somebody went to all this trouble for my birthday, I'd be embarrassed. It sets me to thinking, right? Does set me to thinking, what is this thing we're doing here? What is this thing we're doing here? When I was growing up, I loved toys. And I'm happy to be in the toy business because while it's exhausting, especially this year, grinding, especially this year, I love toys, and I love getting toys into the hands of children. And I love seeing the children, and I love seeing them play with the toys and their faces of wonder, experiencing the novelty of it. I do miss them. I haven't been able to interact with kids at all this year. With what's been happening. They've been shuttled away, cooped up. Oh. We're not doing these kids any favors. We're not doing these kids any favors at all. That's an old song. I sing it all the time on this channel. I saw something in the Wall Street Journal. It was actually a response to an article in the Wall Street Journal. Two of the contributors to the Wall Street Journal put forward an opinion piece in defense of Scrooge. We're at an interesting period right now where we're turning our villains into heroes. Or at the very least, we're attempting to make it so that our villains are supposed to be understandable or relatable. That our villains are supposed to be complex figures who we can relate with and empathize with. Disney has been doing it for a long time now, right? It has a whole villainous franchise. Maleficent is a villain turned sympathetic anti-hero, or a hero outright in certain viewings or interpretations. This idea that a villain can just be a villain, or this sort of preparing us to take a more empathetic view of the people who have been traditional villains, is interesting. It has an interesting cultural vibe, and it's something I've been noticing more and more. The attempt to reinterpret Scrooge as a hero of that story, and not the redeemed Scrooge. They were very clear about this, but the actual man, Scrooge, who he was. That's just a naked attempt to turn a sort of Mr. Burns contemptuous, hoarder, greedy, ridiculous person into something that we're supposed to respect, admire, look up to. Like, that's just a naked attempt. But there has been a cultural move towards empathizing with villainous figures, of giving redemption arcs to people who simply don't deserve them or weren't positioned to receive them, right? Like someone like Maleficent is a case in point. Like, Maleficent was simply supposed to represent the forces of evil in the world, right? And going back and sort of revising the history in order to make her story about someone who's attempting to protect the kingdom from an evil king. But even in that story, there's a person who is irredeemable, right? King Philip in the Maleficent story and the new Maleficent story. He's a power-hungry madman. And so maybe I just defeat my own point. But at the same time, we're supposed to think sociopaths are delightful and funny. People like Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory aren't despicable misogynists with sociopathic streak who causes everyone around them nothing but anxiousness and trouble for his own, to his own ends. We're supposed to think he's some kind of lovable imp, that his sexism is perfectly acceptable because he doesn't know any better. Like, a show like Dexter has become incredibly popular, and this is because they've added in like an exemption clause to him. Oh, he only sociopathically murders people who are bad, who he judges to be bad. So I guess he's a lovable sociopath, or a lovable psychopath. Benedict Cumberbatch's Sherlock was a stated high-functioning sociopath who, in the end, actually did murder people and was allowed to walk out of that unscathed because his superior intellect ends up being useful. And on and on and on the list goes. On and on and on it goes. We're supposed to consistently believe that, oh, villains are just misunderstood. There's this thrum that's coming up from the culture that's trying to convince us that, oh, corporate CEOs aren't demonically evil people bent on the destruction of mankind for their own greed, perpetuated forward by their own arrogance and hubris. No, they're just misunderstood. They weren't hugged enough when they were little. And it's this, like, coddling, this childish coddling. Because the reality is that there is evil in the world. There are people who are evil and who want to do harm to others simply by course of their own existence. They want to hurt others. They tell you about it. They state it. They're not hiding. And yet we're supposed to treat them without concern or without fear. Like, one of the big talking points, there's been a big upswell of fascism underneath the Trump administration. White supremacists who were always there suddenly felt safer. They were able to come out. And the people who fought against these fascists called themselves anti-fascists, Antifa for short, and use violent methods against the fascists, as they should. When I was growing up, heroes murdered fascists. Fascists were nameless, worthless nobodies who the protagonist hero would gun down without a second thought. They were not humans, they were not people, they were avatars of evil, nameless goons to be put down like dogs with raucous celebration. The only time I can ever remember anybody in any of the films that I was watching growing up where Nazis and fascists were gunned down with impunity and celebrated, their deaths being celebrated, was in the third Indiana Jones movie, when Indiana Jones rightly killed several Nazis in front of his father, and his father had a moment of protest, or a moment of astonishment, moreover. He wasn't angry at his son. He wasn't put out or protesting even the action of his son. He was more astonished at what had happened in front of him, and that it was his son that was the deliverer of the rightful blow. And now in the modern era, we're supposed to be mollycoddling these fascists. We're supposed to be looking at these fascists and saying, oh, hey, that's just your perspective, man. Whoa, dude, like, that's intense and all, but I disagree. I think that white supremacy shouldn't be a thing, and that we shouldn't be using violence against defenseless minorities, yo. Like, that's the extent to which we are supposed to be acting, instead of doing what we should be doing, which is putting these people down like they're rabid dogs, like they're infected, like they're zombies coming to infect us and spread their plague throughout our society. The people in power, the people who have power, and who are chaotically evil and radically evil in their worldview, they want you to have a soft view of evil. They want you to look at evil and think, well, what about their perspective? What about their side of things? Sure, they're genocidal nightmare maniacs, but like, they made iPhones. Sure, people like Jeff Bezos could solve the Flint, Michigan water crisis without even noticing it. Sure, he could provide a basic income for the people in his city. He could provide Medicare for all. He could provide a guaranteed food and shelter for everybody. He has the finances to be able to do this, right? There's nothing stopping him. And the reality is that once he did it, he would still be a billionaire, right? So Jeff Bezos isn't here to help you. If he was, he would be doing it, right? No, that would make him a hero, right? Like, if he walks into small communities and just gave everybody in that small community $2,000 guaranteed dollars for the rest of their lives, every month for the rest of their lives, if he just walked into Flint, Michigan and said, these pipes need to be fixed up, let's go. If he just walked into literally any town, literally anywhere and said, hey people, here's something to help with your day-to-day life. Here's something to get by. He would be a hero. And financially, it would be almost irrelevant to him. He would have there would be no detraction, there would be no loss of power for Jeff Bezos. He's the wealthiest man in the world by a wide margin, and he could very easily resolve many of the world's problems, and he doesn't care at all. He simply doesn't care. He chooses not to. And this, in the end, makes him a villain. Because what is the purpose of accruing power if not to help others with it? And if you accrue that power and then choose only to help yourself, you are a villain. And we shouldn't be nice about it. We shouldn't just bite our tongue, bob our head, walk along with it. Like, how is Jeff Bezos not Lex Luthor? He looks exactly like him. Right? Jeff Bezos looks exactly like Lex Luthor would look like. Get Ben Kingsley to be Lex Luthor in a Superman movie. Like, and it really starts to beg the question, like, why the hell are we allowing these individual owners to gain control over our goods and food distribution network? You don't think that that's going to lead to problems? You don't think that there's going to be like a big difficulty? Like I just watched, I've been watching a lot of 90s and early 2000s films, right? And the villains in these films are like, you know, oh, the owner of a corporation, you know, they're powerful, all this kind of stuff, but they haven't actually grasped onto the idea that, like, oh, these owners actually own, like, our food and shelter distribution network, right? Like, these people actually own our goods distribution network. And we can't actually vote against their interests. We can't actually put anyone in power to say anything to them, right? We've, like, ceded this enormous social requirement to worthless middlemen who don't care about us at all. And yet we're supposed to look at them and think of them sympathetically. We're supposed to look at Scrooge with sympathetic eyes and believe that he was somehow a benefit to our society. Not only are they attempting to dumb us down, and they are attempting to dumb us down, but they're also attempting to demoralize us. And I don't mean demoralize, like depress us, although they are definitely trying to do that. I mean that they're trying to make us non-moral. They're trying to make us sociopaths, like they are. Right? And many of their surrogates have outright stated this. You've got Ben Shapiro saying outright that empathy shouldn't be part of politics. Like, it's essentially an argument, a pro-sociopath argument. One that should be taken very seriously. Because certainly the powerful think that way. Right? It's a real mob boss, mafioso way of looking at the world. Right? But even those guys have been turned into sympathetic moral figures in a way. Right? The Sopranos. We're all supposed to look at these reprehensible mob bosses and think to ourselves, oh, he's just misunderstood. He didn't get hugged enough as a kid. And what have they done? And you should feel it right now, today of all days. They've taken over Christmas, and they use it against us. They say, if you don't go buy some shit for people, you don't love them. If you don't give us money in exchange for baubles, then you're the Scrooge. Oh. That's the end of me, guys. Have yourselves a good night. Merry Christmas to all.